Welcome, everyone. You are here with me and my beautiful wife, Sandra Johnson. Say hi, my love.
Hey.
Hey. We're here with our guest host, John McClain.
Oh, man. Best seat in town. I love it.
Well, let's get started because we're really excited about who we have here. We have a young man named Mikey Marquez. He's a local guy, local talent, financial planner here in Tucson. Say hi, Mike.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Mikey.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm a financial planner here in town. Born and raised so far in Tucson, so it's I'm about 3 generations deep.
Wow.
Here.
Awesome.
It's been fantastic to get connected to the community. You grow up seeing Tucson a certain way here.
Right.
Being in business and seeing all of the cool things that Tucson is going to have to offer sometime soon or is starting to now, it's been enlightening on how much Tucson is going to grow in the next 10, 20 years.
And I must point out, I have to be the kind of the relief here. You have a voice for radio, brother. Like, they say you know one has a face for radio. I wouldn't say that's the case for you, but you definitely have a voice for radio.
I'm trying to drop it an octave to sound a bit more commanding. So.
Yeah, I hear it. Yeah, I feel commanded.
Check out the podcast though, because he's not hard on the eyes either.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you were talking about me?
Yeah, no, we were talking about you.
Okay. Everybody, we're talking about me in case you're wondering. They were not talking about Mikey at all. Yeah. Mike, where'd you go to school at?
Sabino High School. And then right after that, went straight to the U of A.
Cool.
Graduated at the end of 2019, so right before the pandemic.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Yeah,
hey,
nice. You got an actual graduation.
I did. I got the last one up until I think this past May, and I made the cut, and shoot, it's been a ride since then. I will say that.
Yeah.
I can only imagine heading out into the workforce during COVID. That had to be a challenge for you.
It was. I got a little bit of a run-up time because I took my company's offer for an internship the last semester of college. So I got some time to get my network set up, or at the very least get my face and name known just a bit.
Right.
But it was tough. It was, because then all of those networking avenues that I was utilizing shut down come March. And that's really where you had to improvise. You had to use some of the relationships you already built, and frankly, just buckle down and see what's going to happen.
Let our audience know what it is that you really do.
On the business side.
You're a financial planner.
So I would say it's a mix between a therapist and a personal trainer for finances.
I love that was nice. That was
really
poetic
deep,
right there,
I
man.
tried to give a pause there for some effects too.
We scared you, huh?
Elaborate, please, sir.
Yeah. Everybody's got a financial story. Everybody, whether it's within their family or whether it's within their own personal finances. Just like getting to know somebody and becoming friends or something like that, there's people walk in with their armor on in a lot of these conversations.
Right.
And that's where I think the therapy portion of it comes into play, because they either have not talked to a financial professional or they've had a bad experience with a financial professional. Those are, I would say, the 2 times where relationship building is most necessary for the process. And so I have to give them a good space and a good environment to be able to talk about some of these things, because they do get deep. You know, we do talk about them passing away at some point, or their parents passing away, when it comes to inheritances and life insurance. And maybe they've been in debt before, or are, scrounging to get out of debt.
Right.
Maybe they have had a bankruptcy in a business. These are all situations that we need to be sensitive of. So there really does have to be that extra bit of relationship to come out of it. And then the personal trainer part comes when we're actually rolling up our sleeves and getting to work with getting them a plan and being able to hold them accountable to it and get them based on their goals. Because like I said, we got to know what they want at the end of the day, what would be fulfilling for them to accomplish, both I would even say personally and professionally, because that's how we taper the financial plan to them.
Guys, I want to know you're listening to Mikey Marquez. He is a financial advisor, local guy here in Tucson, born and raised. And the thing that makes me weary about finances, that is such a personal thing. When I come to you in finance, I have to give you all my personal information. You got to know about things that I did that I don't want anybody to know, but it helps me to get my finance. How do you get somebody to get that out to you?
I start by letting them know that, first off, anything that we talk about is 110% confidential.
Yes.
I make sure that they're closed door conversations, and I make sure that we don't progress the conversation into areas before I've earned their trust. So I let them know, hey, it will be important for us to talk about this. Are you comfortable with that? Or do we pursue other avenues before we're ready to address that sensitive topic? So I try to, and that's where the mixture of the relationship, but also doing my job, it's kind of like a dance, because I got to be a friend to them, but I also have to be that professional that's going to give advice at the end of the day that they should take.
Okay,
So-
I'm ready.
So typically when you start a conversation with a client, are you dealing with someone who's bringing you the investments maybe that they already have started, or are most people kind of starting from scratch and you're trying to build from the ground up?
Per my age, a lot of my peers, or those that I've been able to connect with more immediately, are not yet established. They're still getting their budgets sorted out, or they're fresh out of college and they've got the student debt that they want to tackle. There are, frankly, a limited amount of things that I can do for them when it comes to continually working, because they have to, one, have their career play out, earn income, to then cycle into the debt and everything like that. Where I find the most impactful work is done is those that are established,
Right.
and have history and have investments somewhere else, or maybe they've got these old 401ks that are floating around and they've just never quite addressed them since they left their other employer. During those circumstances, I like to know what kind of pieces they have in play. I describe it to people sometimes too as a chess match, right? Because we've got these different pieces that all move different ways, right? The knight does this, the pawns move forward, in one block increments. And so I got to know what pieces they have, so that we need to know what pieces we either add in or even consult around the right ways to use the pieces. But it's all, nobody just has one thing.
Right.
They have a lot.
Yes.
And we have to be able to navigate that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I definitely love, and it's funny. My brother Mikey is as well our audience member here in studio, and we've been talking a lot about kind of how things work together synergistically, and there's kind of like a culture you have to kind of create around what you do to help the community as a whole. Like, it's not just a matter of you helping that person that you're sitting down with, like what's best for the community for this person. And it seems like a lot of the holistic work that you're doing in a way with the people just to make them healthy. And like you're saying, that you have to break down some walls and build some rapport and trust to get to that place. But once you do, then you can help them. Much like my relationship with Ray and Sandra, you can get to that place.
Absolutely. You said such a key word in our business, and that's holistic. And it's been used a lot recently, but when I describe holistic, it is that approach of, not just financially, what can we do for you, but how do those finances fold into their personal goals, their familial goals? Do they want to take their grandkids on a trip later on? So it's it branches out into so many different directions.
We're headed to the break. We have Mikey Marquez, who's the local talent financial financial planner here. So we'll be back in a minute. Thank you for listening to our show, and come sit back on the couch on a Sunday and lay back and hear some more about financial planning.
Love it.
Hey everybody, we are back. This is Sandra, Ray, and John. We're here with Mikey Marquez, who is a financial planner, local guy in Tucson, U of A grad, Sabino High School grad. So he's one of ours.
He's everything. He is a Tucson boy, born and raised from the playground where he spent most of his days. Right?
Absolutely. I'm still there, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Me and you both, brother. I saw you at the playground the other day. It was great.
Yeah, he had the walking cast to show for it too.
Yeah, that's how it happens.
Oh, it was crutches, wasn't it? Hey, Mikey, when you're dealing with a client that comes in, you're not really looking at numbers so much as you are the person. So we tend to think, I've got, maybe $50,000 to invest, but you're looking more at the big picture, age, their financial goals. Give us kind of walk us through the types of things that you're looking at before you can help them plan for how to invest that money.
Absolutely. I mean, you said it, the numbers really are the end result. Those are what are going to come out of our conversations. However, going into it, I think one of the biggest factors in any of our kinds of businesses, because there are more than enough people to ever work with, is the right fit.
Right.
I've got to be the person that they can communicate with, going back to what you were talking about, Ray, of having that level of comfortability to get into these topics. And if that level of comfortability isn't there, there's always somebody else to go talk to. I have no objections to sending somebody to a other direction if that's going to be a better fit for them.
Right.
So that's always priority, because then we can really get into some of these combos. The second, I would say, step that I usually take, or at least the second priority, is I need to know if they're going to be candid enough with me on what their goals are going to be.
Wow.
And I help them map it out. You know, I use the term dream build a lot. I'll let them know, hey, this is a space for you to paint a picture. So paint me that picture. What do you want retirement to look like? Not just the first week kicking it on a beach, but what would you actually like to do? What would be fulfilling for you?
Can I interject? Is that tough for kids who are young, who are your age, from 25 to 30, to understand that you have to think about retirement? Is it tough to get those guys to do that?
This is usually the first time they've ever talked about it. And when I'm working with somebody young, it quickly becomes, it quickly falls down the list of priorities, because they want to talk about buying their first house, or getting into their own business, or maybe starting up a fund for some seed money for themselves when it comes to starting that business.
Right.
But ultimately, retirement's usually a goal for a lot of people. And there's starting to be a little asterisk next to retirement these days, because people are finding so many other outlets that they can take into their older years.
Good point.
That continues to bring in the money. So we don't necessarily have to fund all of it, but can we at least get them to the point of financial independence?
Yes.
So I've been rephrasing that with some people, because who knows what it's going to look like when I'm 65, or whatever that ideal retirement age is for, for future generations.
45.
45, right? It's everybody's got a different timeline.
Right.
And I would say that's even another key, is knowing just what are their expectations. Because some people love what they do, and they would love to take their career to the grave.
Yeah, my dad had a hard time walking away from his job at 80.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was really hard.
And that's commendable, because it means that it's been fulfilling all along the way.
The greatest generation.
Sure is.
Yeah.
Sure was. Right?
It is.
Yeah.
You mentioned, when you're working with younger people, typically they don't really have the funds, but let's be honest, that's where you get your biggest bang for the buck, right? When you start early. But they don't need a lot of money to start. So what kind of advice would you give to someone who, maybe we're talking they're giving up a few lattes or movies, something like that, to start preparing for their future?
Go online and find a time value of money calculator.
Time value
of money calculator.
Write that down.
It's one of the most revealing tools for anybody to know what your dollars are worth today, or what you're giving up by spending the money today versus saving it and using via investments or whatever, the idea of compound interest. Using that, you'll get to see really what those dollars are worth in the future.
Am I going to cry? Because I'm on the other end of the spectrum. Am I going to cry if I go to check that out?
It's revealing. I will say that.
Okay. It's empowering.
It is. And it can be empowering in the right circumstance, because I think when anybody's trying to get themselves in a better position, or when they want to make some radical change in their lives, it usually does take sometimes a harsh dose of reality on, man, I have been giving up a lot of future potential in my dollars by going and getting Starbucks every day, or spending a lot of money at Sam's Club, like all of us do here.
Oh man, I spent $50 on lunch today. Don't talk about it.
That hurts, man.
But really what that calculator does is let's say you spend $1 today. What really is that dollar? Let's say it were invested in the stock market at a certain rate of return over 40 years. that number is revealing. Just to see what $1 is, let alone a car lease for something you didn't really need.
Right.
You could have gotten away with a Honda. You're renting a Beamer. That's I think where that's where a lot of wealth is lost.
Okay.
It's unrealized wealth.
This is for you, Mikey.
That would be the other Mikey that's in the room.
It's funny. All this stuff you're saying, it's just kind of like putting glazing on the donut that I've been making, with the conversations I've been having with my brother the past couple of days. Because, we all go through the same thing at 25 through 30 years old. And you don't know until you know. It's just like, and that's why I think, certainly we suggest to our listeners, get a hold of this Mikey, not my Mikey, to kind of get in the know. And it seems like, and I'll, don't want to take words out of your mouth, but it seems like a part of what you do is like you navigate people to the right solutions more than just being like, okay, I'm the financial expert, you need me to figure it out, but more like help them figure it out.
It's a collaborative process, and it shouldn't be a shameful process.
Yes.
And that's where people get on the edge of their seats of like, oh man, do I even want to start this? Because do I really even want to find out, what I've been doing or what I haven't been doing? And I don't want it to be a shameful process.
Right.
And that's where we can absolutely turn the narrative moving forward into, what, this is where we've been. Are these expenses worth it to me? If they are, more power to you. Spend the money. However, just know that we got to be able to balance the future with the present. And that's where this conversation and this collaboration really is.
I do not want to outlive my money.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Mikey, tell us how to get a hold of you again.
Yeah, so you can best reach me via email. My work email is my first initial, M, and then my last name, Marquez, MARQUEZ, at financialguide.com. And you can always text me or call me at my cell phone, 520-305-1225.
We can't say enough how impressed we are with you as a young man.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I know that you
Or an old man. You're impressive.
You're involved with the Boys and Girls Club. We know that you're also serving on the Arizona Bowl Volunteer Committee, and I know that's just a piece of what you do. And just can't say, like I said, enough about how impressive it is to sit here and talk with you and the depth of knowledge that you have. So thank you for joining us today. And we will be back after this break.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you. We want to sit back here and tell everybody thank you for coming, for listening. I hope you're sitting back on the couch and realizing this is a great Sunday to be in Tucson. We're back with Darlene Twiss, who's been on our show before. Last time she was here, she was gave us some great information on SPUDs, which are seller property disclosure statements. And
and it was quite the mouthful, isn't it?
Yes.
But today, she has so much good information. We thought we'd talk about subdivisions and buying in subdivisions and things like that. So I'll leave it up to Sandra. Sandra has some great questions that she wanted to ask Darlene.
Hey, Darlene. So you specialize in real estate law.
Yes.
I don't think we mentioned that. So CC&Rs and HOAs are probably a hot topic. And people love them or they hate them, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So could you talk to us a little bit about CC&Rs? If somebody's buying, what should they be looking for? And what kind of concerns should they have? Or are they a good thing?
Sure. So HOAs in general are a good thing because they will help you increase your property values, make sure everyone's following the rules. And those rules are typically embodied in what you've called the CC&Rs, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions. And those are recorded against the property. So when you buy in a particular subdivision, you will get a copy, usually through your title company, of the CC&Rs. And they govern just about everything. So I would highly recommend that you read them, and you read them very carefully, because they tell you everything from what color you may be able to paint your house to whether you can have an RV or an RV garage or a carport, or what structures you can and can't have attached to your house.
We recently saw a townhouse or condo where the HOA had been dissolved. Do you see that often? And should that be a concern for a buyer?
So it does happen. Generally speaking, the members of the neighborhood may no longer wish to have an HOA or run it. They may bring in a private management company. They also may just decide they don't want to be part of a development that has those extra rules or is subject to the additional fees and let everyone regulate themselves. I wouldn't be concerned about it. I would just make sure that whenever you buy a property that there are no liens. So if there was an issue with the previous HOA, just make sure everything's clean against the property.
What happens in a case like that if you have maybe a shared roof on a townhouse or a condo and the HOA maybe in the past has done those repairs?
Well, I think now you're stuck doing them for sure. But I would see if there still are CCNRs, because usually the CCNRs will mention that there's going to be an HOA and then it's created. Sometimes the CCNRs still survive even if there is no HOA. So, for instance, you could buy a house that has restrictions on it just because that was what was previously decided and recorded against it.
On the HOAs, if you have an issue that comes up, maybe a violation, how much teeth is there in that documentation and stuff that the HOA has in place? And is that kind of from one HOA to the next, depending on how passionate people are about either the weeds growing in your yard or your neighbors parking on the wrong side of the street?
I think so. I think the violations do have teeth. However, you could always ask for an appeal or ask to talk to the board and say, why did I get the violation? I've cleaned it up. Would you be kind enough to wipe this one off? Typically, it's the management company that drives through the neighborhood and notes the violations. So, and they usually come by on a particular day in the month. It's not usually the board members, but it can be. It depends whether it's board managed or management company managed. And then there's some flexibility, like if you had weeds growing in your yard and you mowed the lawn, then that probably solves the problem. But persistent lack of care with respect to your property is going to raise a very big red flag. And it also hurts other properties for sale within that subdivision, because people want to know they're buying in a subdivision where everybody does their thing and it's well maintained.
Yeah.
And sometimes we see the opposite. We see where there are things that the HOA really isn't addressing. What about the homeowner who's living next door to someone whose weeds are 3 foot tall, or they're, like I said, maybe parking places they're not supposed to be, and the HOA really is not being proactive? Does that homeowner have any kind of course of action that they can take?
Sure. Usually the first step is to complain to the management company so that the management company informs the board. Then there's typically a board meeting at some point. They vary per organization and what their rules are, but usually it's once a month or every couple of months. And at that point, there should be a public forum so people could voice whatever concerns they have and have them answered by the board, or the board could always look further into them.
I guess that means you have to show up to those HOA meetings, huh?
Yes. And with COVID, a lot of them have turned to Zoom. So now I think they're moving back to in person. But if you do live in a community, I recommend that you do read the minutes if you don't attend the meetings. Usually the meeting minutes should be available to you so you can find out what's going on in the neighborhood, what you should be concerned about, if potentially there's an assessment coming up or something went really wrong, and you need to be aware of it.
What are you seeing in HOAs now, and what I'm thinking of in problems they're having in HOAs, and what are you dealing with as far as from the lower standpoint, HOAs and discrepancies?
So a lot of it lately has related to short-term rentals and these Airbnbs that are popping up in residential neighborhoods. So regulating them partly depends on what your CCNRs already say and whether you limit any type of leasing. It has been a very hot topic. A lot of organizations have amended their CCNRs, but there's been some recent cases that have looked at whether you can really amend to absolutely prohibit someone from leasing their property. Because generally speaking, your property rights are supposed to be protected, and you really don't want to limit someone unless you absolutely have to.
Right.
And sometimes we see communities that are established where there were rentals allowed, and then there's now a small percentage of rentals allowed, and you have to get on a waiting list to be able to rent out your unit maybe, or your home. Is that something that is kind of you're grandfathered in? Is that a given, or does that all depend on what the members vote on?
It's all dependent on what the members vote on and what already exists. So if there's a pattern of limiting who can rent, that's probably going to continue to be enforced. But CCNRs can change over time depending on what the community is looking to do.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We were talking to Darlene Twiss, who's a real estate attorney in Tucson, who is very good at what she does. And I'm sorry, I just think my mic was just, I couldn't hear anybody. I thought there maybe something that happened. I tried to feel in my heart, but it's still working.
You're still here. You're alive.
So we're going to the break. If you're looking to buy or sell a home or have any questions concerning real estate, we would love to help you. Call Sandra at 520-850-1725 or myself, Ray Smith, at 520-904-7711. You're listening to the I Am Real Estate Show on The Voice, KVOI, 1030 a.m. See you on the other side. Thanks for coming back with us today. We are here with Darlene Twiss, who is a real estate attorney here in the beautiful Old Pueblo. Question for you, Darlene, we have is that what do you recommend for a client before they go and buy a home when it comes to HOAs?
So the first thing I would recommend is to contact the management company for that particular HOA, find out what the reserves are so you know how financially healthy the neighborhood is, as well as look at the financial statements per month to find out what the HOA is spending money on. If there are any red flags, then I would definitely follow up on those. So any big unexpected expenditures that just seem out of the ordinary, like garbage pickup that costs $30,000 in 1 month, would probably be a sign that something happened,
yeah.
And I think also you want to make sure, like I said before, you read through all of those CCNRs, you look at the bylaws, you can find out who the current board members are. You may wish to speak to the president of the board to ask any questions that you have. But I would drive around the neighborhood too, see if there are common facilities. How are those maintained? Is the pool green or is it blue? What do the buildings look like that are part of that common area? Because if it doesn't look good or if anything is amiss, then you will probably be paying for it in an assessment coming up.
And too, the size of that community might make a difference. So if the HOA is responsible for the roads and there are 15 homes, you may be looking at a lot larger ticket item than if it was a community with 150 homes.
Absolutely. If you have a gate and private roads, you are paying for the maintenance of those roads, and that is very, very expensive. So something to consider. There are advantages to having a gate attendant and a gate for that extra security, but then if your roads are private, you do have that extra added expense. So I would pay attention to all of those things and figure out what's a greater concern to you. If it's a relatively safe neighborhood that doesn't have any issues, they may not need to be gated. And then the county or the city may maintain those roads. So there's extra savings in that. But I would check out the community facilities. There are a number of people who like living in a place that has a pool so they don't have to have one and maintain it, and extra facilities to hold events, community activities for their children, or if they're older, perhaps they might want some community activities for them.
During the break, we talked about two AAs. One was assessments and the other one was architectural review. Oh gosh, tell me about those and what are those concerns about when they come to you for those issues?
Okay, so the first one, assessments,
Yes.
right? So those are one-time fees or fees that are paid out over time that are assessed equally against everyone in the neighborhood to pay for improvements. So like we were just saying, for roads, it could be very, very expensive. So you want to keep an eye on those because you would have to budget in your own personal finances to make sure that you could pay that money. So in addition to your regular monthly or quarterly HOA fees, you might have an assessment anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000, and the payment terms of those will vary, but you'll be notified of that. And that's something that's determined by the board.
Okay, so it is determined by the board. They have a membership, they meet, they talk about it, and everybody agree to it, and then the assessments come. It's just like the management company didn't all of a sudden say, hey, we need to get these roads done. We're going to charge everybody $5,000. It has to be a meeting.
Yes, and typically you're going to know what it's relating to. So if
Okay.
there are major upgrades that are coming up, you'll be advised, and most likely you'll receive a letter in the mail explaining that an assessment is coming so that you're prepared for it. But again, someone who's been living in a community for 20 years and they've never been assessed, when they suddenly get a $5,000 bill, it's pretty shocking. So you do want to keep reading those minutes every once in a while to make sure you're up to date with everything that's happening.
Yeah, we actually had a client that was selling, and there were rumors kind of going around that some of the residents wanted to fill in the pool because they didn't want to have to do the repairs to the pool. But something like that, they're going to address that. Do they have to go out to the members, all the members, and vote on it, or will the board make that decision?
So it really depends on what the underlying documents say requires a vote of the community and what doesn't. I would hope that any major assessment is going to be discussed, at least with everyone in the community, and then that assessment would be handled pursuant to the underlying rules.
Okay.
Second one is the
Architectural Review Committee.
Architectural Review Committee.
So they actually serve a very important function within the HOA. If you're going to make any changes to your house, typically structural or paint color wise, the Architectural Review Committee wants to know, because part of the benefit of living with an HOA is that there is someone looking out for you, so you don't have a fluorescent greenhouse next to you or lights that are brighter than they should be, etc. So there is someone who is looking out for you, and if you are going to make a change, then you would go through that committee and get approval.
And we're here with Darlene Twiss, who is a real estate attorney here in Tucson, the old Pueblo. She's very talented, and we talked about some pretty cool and interesting subjects. Last time we talked about SPUDs. Today we're talking about HOAs. And what would you recommend would be the best way for someone to get a hold of you or your firm if they want to talk to somebody about these questions?
Sure, they can reach us at combslawgroup.com or give us a call in the office, and that's 602-957-9810. I have it on speed dial, so I never need to call.
During
I
the
bet
break,
you
we
do.
also talked about benefits of having a CCNR and having an HOA. Let's talk about those. We want to end on a good note, and there's some good things about the HOAs and stuff, and please elaborate if you can.
Absolutely. Well, I would like to think that all the board members care very deeply about the community, and they live in it too. So there's this great sense of responsibility and care about all of the homes in the community. And with that comes the advantage of, your property values are going to be maintained because the HOA board and the management company are making sure that everyone follows their rules. Also, you have the benefit of the common facilities and the fact that there's someone out there maintaining them, entering into the contracts, making sure everyone does their part to make sure the community looks good and is safe.
I think sometimes, too, we found that the communities will kind of gather information, and they have vendors that are familiar with the community, and you kind of benefit from that, getting that information from other people that have used them, and it kind of gives you a great starting place as well.
Absolutely. And it's nice to get to know your neighbors as well. I mean, there's the fact that you live in an HOA automatically means you have a community. And so some communities will have parties for holidays, or will have get-togethers during the summer, just a meet and greet. So you can actually get out and meet your neighbors, because otherwise everyone's so busy you may not see them. And some of them, of course, in Tucson have swim teams, so great activities to keep our kids healthy during the summer.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when someone is buying a house, that HOA documentation is provided to them for them to review as part of our contract. Where was I going with that thought? I have no idea.
What she was going with that fact is that they have some things that said, here are some of the things that the HOA is going to do. Here are some things that you're required to as a owner to do. Can that ever change? Because we talk about those things, because one time I saw someone that said the roofs have to be repaired maintained by the HOA. And then the other one, and then like a couple of years, I saw an amendment saying that it changed. It takes a lot to make those kind of changes in an HOA document.
Yes, the CCNRs generally dictate how many homeowners need to vote in favor of an amendment. So you would have to present it to the homeowners that would be affected for sure. Usually that's everyone in the HOA. and then they would vote on it. And so the threshold depends. It's going to be at least 67% for the most part. And that's a very general statement, but you'd have to look at the CCNRs to see what the thresholds are. And then if the amendment passes, you would go ahead and record it, and then everyone going forward would be bound.
Yeah, we have a client who has a HOA, one of these communities, and what I noticed that people don't pay attention to is the amendments. Because you read the HOA and it says a lot of things. This one said you're only allowed to have 2 dogs and 1 cat, and that's it. But it also said you're allowed to have 4 pets. You know what I mean? Something like that. So you're saying, I don't understand what that is. But if you've been in a neighborhood long enough, the amendment, people who've been there long enough, they changed that thing. So make sure you read the amendments that attach to that, because they kind of help you solve a lot of issues that you're thinking about.
I'm not the client you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well, and
We'll talk about offline.
they have 5 days to review that. Although if it's in their inspection period, they likely would have 10 days to review that. But there are some other things that can impact the sale for us, and that is whether or not there's any litigation pending. And sometimes if it's a condo, that HOA has to go and kind of give an assessment to the lender so that they know how many of those units are occupied by investors versus homeowners. So those documents are extremely important.
They are, and your lender's also going to look at what your HOA fees are per month in light of your own personal budget, and that may affect how much they choose to lend to you.
Sure, absolutely goes into those calculations. So.
And I think I would just like to say, read everything. If you're buying a house and there are recorded documents that affect it, read it all. And in fact, sometimes it's even easier to start with the amendments and go backwards. So at least you know what the most recent changes were. And then when you're going back through the original document, you can make some notes. But if you have any questions, the CCNRs are often complicated and long. So I would say it might be worth a consultation with an attorney to be able to go through questions that you do have. And, you know, like you were saying before, pets are our babies. So it's really important that if you are buying a house somewhere that you're able to take all of your family with you.
Yeah, there may be restrictions on not only on the number, but the size of those pets. And I remember one of the HOAs that said you had to control your animals. And I said, what does that mean? Because there was a cat that was in the neighborhood that would go into people's homes, and they didn't like that. So I just got a funny look. I wish you were facing the camera. So yeah, there are some things that probably having some interpretation of what that means would be really great.
I have heard a lot of things with other people's pets going into other people's houses. So keep those doggy doors closed, because sometimes you do get a surprise.
Yeah, we want to thank Darlene Twiss, who is a real estate attorney here in Tucson, one of the best. If you have a chance to reach you, how can they reach you again, Darlene?
CombsLawGroup.com. And our telephone number again, 602-957-9810.
Thank you, Darlene. And thanks for our amazing sponsors: Horizon Inspection, Indy Realty, Inspire Life Mortgage, Arizona Sands Club, Regal Pest Prevention, Atomic Nutrition, and Sweet Little Chefs. See you guys next week.
Time, money, and value calculator.
Yeah, don't forget that.